All right, you guys, this is Jared Benjamins with another reaction video. And I'm doing a reaction video on this dude named Mr. Based. Not Mr. Beast, but it's some dude that is a manager for this dude named Josh. And he's got a channel called Dirty some I can't remember, Dirty Towels or some shit like random. But it's he's an older autistic dude, and I feel like Mr. Bass is like taking full advantage of this guy. Like, it's hard to explain, but when you watch this video, you'll know what the hell I mean. All right, here we go, you guys.
Long before becoming the manager for World of T-Shirts,
World of T-Shirts.
Mr. Bass spent half a decade in prison for running an escort business that supposedly supplied the governor of New York.
How did the governor think he was going to keep this quiet? You had the governor as a client. You would give him freebies because then you have him by the balls, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Ever since, he's been legally walking on thin ice.
I have a backstory and a lore. All you guys have just done internet crap.
From doing crypto rug pulls, harassing women on stream,
You're bad. No, I didn't do it on purpose.
and allegedly
Yo, so that's just like a little, like the tip of the iceberg with this man. Like, he's fucking evil. Like, when I watched this earlier today, I'm like, ain't no way this guy is doing all this.
being involved in a woman's death.
I had a roommate named Zoltan who was with this chick. He goes, "You want some GHB?"
Laughing at the
I
name,
woke
that's
up
funny.
on the floor with vomit all over me. With Zoltan telling me that the girl was.
But how did we get here? Jason Lubell Itzler was born on February 23, 1967, to a Jewish family in New Jersey. His mom, Ronnie Lubell, was a fashion designer, and his birth father, Leonard Silk, was a businessman. But after she had Jason, Ronnie divorced him and remarried a man named Ron, a big shot attorney who eventually gave Jason his last name. Very little is known about Jason's early life besides the fact that he had an obsession with sex, sending letters to Mad Magazine asking them to publish recordings of teenage girls climaxing, which they obviously didn't do. Jason claimed that this obsession of his started because his mom was, and I quote, "the hottest woman in the world," which motivated him to be surrounded by
Oh, man. We are a minute and 30 seconds in, and I am already disgusted.
beautiful women. Obviously, that's a weird comment to make about your mom, but regardless, this obsession eventually turned into ambition, working in the sex industry. Partially, this ambition was influenced by his maternal grandfather, Nathan Lubell, a bookmaker with ties to organized crime who owned a chain of amusement parks and hat stores. Seeing how entrenched his grandpa was in what he called the action really motivated Jason to become an entrepreneur himself, and soon enough, he found himself working as a cabana boy at the Concord Hotel, where he befriended Jason Bin, a man who published magazines like The Hamptons and Los Angeles Confidential. Being acquainted with so many millionaires and even billionaires, Jason was enamored with their lifestyle, and while he floated between a couple of different law schools, he decided to start his first ever business, a phone sex company. His business model was quite simple. First, he advertised his services as a free live call, but the catch was after a minute, a $4.98 a minute charge began rolling, meaning that any caller that wasn't an expert at flicker gooning would end up forking over a decent amount of money. To say that this was profitable is a giant understatement. Jason quickly earned himself the title of the phone sex king of South Beach, raking in $600,000 a month, which, as insane as it is by itself, actually turned into even more at $1.5 million per month within 1 year. But easy come and easy go. Jason's spending habits quickly spun out of control, with him buying luxury cars and spending up to $500,000 decorating his one-bedroom apartment. As he financially spun his wheels in the mud, tragedy struck. His mother, whom he was still very
This nigga gets a one-bedroom apartment with that much type of money, bro, just to decorate it. Are you shitting me?
close with at the time, passed away from cancer in 1994. 3 years later, his phone sex company fell apart due to an unspecified reason that he simply described as an oversight, which concluded in him filing for bankruptcy and losing everything he had, including perhaps the greatest tragedy of
All right, I hate to pause it right now, guys, but I want to shout out this guy. I want to shout out Turkey Tom and his channel. Go and subscribe to that because this is the guy I'm reacting to. And back to the
ball,
video.
losing ownership of the domain pussy.com. Because of the complete failure of his company, he ended up owing $4.5 million at 36% interest to lenders. As a consequence of the debt and the loss of his mother, Jason unfortunately tried to take his own life twice. Once with a steak knife, and the other time by taking 150 sleeping pills at once and chasing it down with some scotch. Without his money, things were looking pretty dire. Jason's mother was gone, and he faced a mountain of debt that seemed extremely impossible to climb out of. But in the year 2000, he decided to make his comeback to the sex industry via a camgirl company, and once again, his eyes were bigger than his stomach, as he proceeded to rent out an
If a man really hated ads, here's what he would do.
we got
Day
an ad.
one, he would install Pi on his computer without spending a dime because it's 100% free. Day two, he realizes how clean and clutter-free his browsing.
Sorry about that,
8,000
you
square
guys.
foot corner building in New York. He went as far as to name his company Soho Models to lure in unsuspecting young women, presenting it as if it were a legitimate modeling business, only to later reveal what they'd actually be doing. Unsurprisingly, this also fell apart. And at one point, Jason recalled finding himself dangling over the side of a building, held by the ankles by a guy named Mikey P. It's uncertain to what extent this little tidbit is true, but given how closely these kinds of businesses are to organized crime, it's probably true. Becoming disillusioned with the industry at the time, Jason decided to clean up his act, go to college, and actually turn his life around. Just kidding. Instead, he decided to pursue another career path: drug trafficking. According to him, he was friends with some Israeli ecstasy dealers at the time, and one day they tried to recruit him. He was asked to carry somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 pills through customs for a payout of $30,000. And while he was initially hesitant to agree to it, he not only took them up on the offer, but he also convinced them to let him smuggle even more pills. To his surprise,
This guy is fucking insane, bro. If like there's anybody that is criminally insane, it is this man right here.
he actually got through customs. And after the job was done successfully, he got paid and kept some 3,000 pills for himself as a bonus for the giant risk he just took. And just like that, Jason was hooked, and he wanted to keep doing it. A couple of years later, he found himself on a plane from Amsterdam to New Jersey with 4,000 tablets of ecstasy on his body, but as soon as he landed, he was caught and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Now, prison can obviously be a pretty scary place, and Jason was completely terrified of the prospect of going. So he decided that the next best course of action was to pretend he was insane. This involved doing things like spinning around for hours on end, and while that
What do you mean pretend he was insane, bro? This boy is fucking drastically like the most insane person I've ever even heard of, bro. And I've watched serial killers all day.
did pale in comparison to what other fakers were doing.
One guy that got through as a full loony took a toothpick and stuck it all the way in his dick. And, just he's like, this is all you have to do, Jason. Do this every day. And keep going to medical and telling him it hurts. And of course, I would never do that. But he got right through. They said he's whack.
Jason successfully got himself sent to a correctional facility for mentally ill people. However, he only stayed there for a month, at which point they figured out he was faking it and sent him to prison in New York, where he proceeded to bounce around through a series of different lockups since people had the tendency to want to kill him after spending a little time with him. I'm not really sure what that's about. He should have
Me either.
done the toothpick thing. As you can probably gather, his time in prison was far from pleasant, and he was especially upset that his grandfather, whom he saw as a gangster, didn't approve of his behavior and cut contact with him during the time he was locked up. But fortunately for him, after 17 months, Jason was released on probation and immediately got to working on his next business idea, New York Confidential, a high-class escort business, but with the twist that Jason would only hire women who had never worked in the sex industry before so that he could provide the ideal girlfriend experience. At first, it seemed like this idea wouldn't go anywhere. Jason wasn't having immediate success. But then, a girl called Natalia signed up and instantly became the face of the company. He started promoting her using a website called eroticreview.com, where he ensured she got an endless sea of 10 out of 10 reviews. If anyone were to rate her any less, Jason personally contacted them, made them an offer they couldn't refuse, which ranged from getting extra time with Natalia to, allegedly, paying up to $5,000 in cash. This tactic worked very well, and she quickly doubled her per hour rate, which eventually peaked at $2,000 an hour. Not too shabby. Natalia worked upwards of 270 hours in 1 month, or around 60 hours per week, which, in a very strange and dysfunctional way, made Jason fall in love with her. The fact that she was an extremely active prostitute didn't bother him at all, as As he saw it, he would only feel hurt if she had sex with someone else for free. Within months, New York Confidential became one of the largest escort agencies in the country, if not the entire world, and Jason Itzler became known as the king of all pimps.
This nigga is giving me Adam 22 vibes, but just not from this modern time. I mean, he still lives with us today, but I just don't understand this, man. I just don't get it.
Going as far as to publicly identify himself as such in restaurants. And through his business, he became closely acquainted with a number of very powerful people who sought his girl's services, even taking out ad spots in mainstream magazines. At its peak, the agency was pulling in around $500,000 a month, with Jason personally pocketing around $3.6 million per year. But of course, there was one little issue with Jason's entire business model. Prostitution is illegal, which forced Jason to operate in a very legally gray manner. For example, he had all of the girls sign custom contracts saying they were only providing time and companionship for their customers, specifically forbidding any sexual activity. But regardless of his clever legal workarounds due to the time he spent at law school, Jason's time as the king of all pimps was not going to last long. Despite still being on parole and even having a curfew, he flashed his barely legal exploits, going as far as recording a reality TV show inside the New York Confidential offices that he pitched to VH1 for $1 million per episode. This footage, which was later supposed to be made into a documentary, has been partially leaked online, and it shows how brazen Jason was, publicly promoting his clearly illegal business. This is like if Al Capone had a TLC show about bootlegging alcohol during Prohibition. The fact he was able to do all of this while on parole is absolutely ridiculous. But most of this brazenness was an act, something Jason needed to put on due to his addiction to public attention, even if it could potentially cost him his freedom. Behind the scenes, he was getting increasingly stressed out, mostly due to having to drive back and forth from New Jersey to New York in order to keep his business running. This stress led to frequent fights between him and Natalia, whom he demanded drive all the way to New Jersey at 3 a.m. just to stay with him overnight, which eventually culminated in her jumping out of a moving car and breaking her heel during one of their arguments. The strain also led to both of them getting into hard drugs. Jason, because he couldn't smoke weed anymore due to court-mandated drug tests, started regularly abusing ketamine, which the test didn't pick up. While the substance didn't affect him too negatively, it did get to Natalia, who during a binge hit her head on a 6-foot-tall statue of an Indian fertility goddess Jason had placed in their room, where she then passed out and had to go to the ER. Between bragging about
KO'd
having been with 700 women and regularly spending tens of
Meet the new standard in sleep. This is Pod 4 Ultra. It's not a bed.
of thousands of dollars on completely useless luxury trinkets to the point where he could barely walk in his own apartment, it was very clear that just like it did when he ran his phone sex business, his eccentricities were getting to be too much. At this point in time, Natalia was also being pushed out of the business by another girl named Mona, who just a few months prior put Jason in house arrest by accusing him of being a domestic abuser. It's unknown to what extent these accusations are true, but it is worth noting that there's not one, but two records of Jason being arrested for beating up his girlfriends around this time. In any case, the betrayal was too much for her to bear, and she left, as Jason became increasingly deranged, saying things like, "I'm bulletproof, rich people don't go to jail." But Jason's time in the sun was quickly,
as he just went to jail multiple fucking times. These guys are fucking genius and a half.
coming to an abrupt end. In late 2004, an altercation broke out between one of Jason's girls and one of his bodyguards, which ended in the man being pepper sprayed and writhing on the floor while she locked herself in one of the rooms and called the cops. While the initial police visit went without any issue, cops began showing up to Jason's property almost every day after that, looking for something they could get him on. It went on for about 2 months until, in January 2005, his property was raided by the police and he was wheeled off to prison. Apparently, the justification for the raid presented itself a few days prior, when 7 of his girls were picked up by the police during another raid, and I'm assuming that during interrogation, the girls tipped the cops off about Jason's shady dealings. He was then formally charged with drug possession, promoting prostitution, money laundering, falsifying business records, stalking, and breaking parole. He was then sent back to prison in New Jersey while awaiting trial. His bail was set at $250,000, with the express condition that the money could not have come from his escort business, meaning Jason really had no chance of getting out. Now, at first, Jason was confident he would actually beat the charges without issue, since he was being defended by a star-studded defense attorney, Paul Berggren. The only problem was, Paul Berggren was himself under federal investigation for allegedly taking part in the murder of an undercover FBI agent. After a few months in jail, it began setting in that he wasn't going to walk.
Damn. Just to let y'all know, I'm not going to react to this full video. It's like an hour, and the way I react, I like to pause a few times in the video, so it's not going to happen. I'll probably make it through halfway if everybody's lucky.
As easily as he initially thought. With his wealth confiscated, he didn't have a penny to his name and couldn't even afford lawyer fees, at which point he asked the judge to represent himself, which the judge denied. But he clearly hadn't lost all hope, as in late May of 2006, he called into the Opie and Anthony radio show from inside, where he claimed he would be released in 4 months and then go right back to what he was doing.
Where I'm gonna have girls 10 times prettier than I had before, and I had Ford models working for me before, and I'm going to have gentlemen much richer, classier, and more famous than I ever had before, and I had many billionaires before.
How do you not love?
He also advertised his personal website, where he told them they could find his documentary, but since then the website has stopped existing, and archives of it don't go back far enough to see what he was actually talking about. Nowadays, the domain is actually used by Jason's detractors to warn people about him. In the end, after spending 1.5 years in custody, he pled guilty to money laundering, attempting to promote prostitution, and admitted that he ran an escort service worth millions. He also forfeited ownership of everything he had purchased with his ill-gotten gains. In the end, he served 30 months in jail since the moment he'd been arrested in January 2005 and was sent to Rikers Island. Now, despite his reputation as one of the most violent prisons in America, Jason challenges this notion, saying that jail was a lot worse, adding that he became something of a minor celebrity among the inmates due to his status as the world's most famous pimp. During his time away, Jason's lawyer, Paul, took over the business, getting as much as $5 grand a week from the escorts, only to also get arrested on the same exact charges as Jason in 2007. Ironically, right as he was released, the then governor of the state of New York, who had been largely responsible for putting
Here, take a hold of my business while I'm gone, and then you can take my charges too.
Jason behind bars in the first place, was himself caught using an escort service to send him a prostitute. Seeing this scandal as an opportunity, Jason butted into the public discourse, claiming that he had personally trained one of the girls the governor had solicited. This sparked a frenzy of attention, as Jason quickly earned himself a spot on the then extremely popular Howard Stern show. There, Jason presented himself as an expert on the escort business.
This nigga's he's wearing the pimp coat.
Commented on the governor's affair.
Isn't it weird to you that our governor would go after a prostitution ring when he himself is into prostitution?
This guy, it was such a ridiculously overzealous prosecutor, and basically, if you watch interviews of him over the years and his wife, he's basically talking about, you know, I live up to a higher standard, so should you. So, I mean, he's a hypocrite.
And spoke about his time in prison.
Did you spend time in a county jail or did you go to a prison?
You were in Rikers, right?
Yeah, Rikers, which is really bad and disgusting. I don't know if you guys know or not, but jail is so much worse than prison. Prison is much nicer. And
so that's the upgrade, going to prison.
And no one beat you up the whole time there?
They loved the reason I was in there, thank God. You know, like, they used to grab me all the time and be like, you know what we'd do to you if you weren't the king of all pimps? You know how we'd take your stuff and beat you up?
Oh, really?
And while he did it, he quite convincingly painted himself as a kind of charismatic, entrepreneurial-minded businessman instead of the exploitative, slightly insane pimp that he truly was. In August, he was invited to The View, where his reception wasn't quite as welcoming as Howard Stern's, with the 4 hosts repeatedly berating him for the derisive comments he made toward the women he worked with. But despite the bad press, Jason was free and he was on kind of a victory lap, while his lawyer, Paul, had just pled guilty to conspiracy to promote prostitution and was sentenced to 3 years probation.
How do these guys, like, I don't know, they get away with all this stuff, man? It just doesn't make any sense. And then we got people that are selling weed that go to prison for fucking 10 years.
And a $50,000 fine. A while later, Natalia, now going by Natalie, got time served, meaning the months that she spent in jail were considered sufficient punishment for her work, allowing her to move back to Montreal, where she eventually published a relatively successful book about her time as New York's #1 escort. All in all, things were looking up, and Jason slowly but surely got back on the horse as an escort mogul, although he quickly hit another obstacle in late 2011 when he got caught providing a prostitute to a customer for 3 days at the Trump International Hotel, along with just short of $5,000 worth of cocaine on the side. While the recipient of these services was never specified, Jason claimed that it was extremely famous country musician Billy Ray Cyrus, adding that the girl he had provided was not an escort, but instead a babysitter. According to Jason's side of the story, he saved Billy Ray Cyrus's life by calling the authorities when Billy was suffering from an overdose. Despite how little proof there was about this story, the inflammatory and dubious nature of it was very much intentional. It was in Jason's best interest to make it as big of an event as possible to distract the public from another controversy that was rearing its head at the time. You see, whenever Jason wasn't pushing drugs or pimping girls, he was partying. In one of these instances, he went to Florida, where he met a girl named Julia Sumnicht, a friend of an associate of his named Zoltan. She eventually left Jason's apartment and went to her place, took a few selfies where she seemed to
I thought Mr. Bass was creepy looking. That nigga is creepy.
be very much out of it, and the very next day, on the 15th of March 2010, she was found dead in her bed by her roommate. Jason and Zoltan had a falling out a few months later, and the case never turned into much, but as the police backed off from it, the family hired private investigators to find out who was responsible for her death. According to them, Julia and Zoltan first went to a nightclub, then went to Jason's apartment, where they stayed for about 2 hours and then left. The thing is, though she was described as seemingly drunk, a toxicology report showed she didn't have enough alcohol in her to actually be drunk. Instead, the real culprit of her altered state in this case was GHB, the date rape drug, which she had so much of that it actually caused her to die.
You guys, that is a scary substance. Let me just tell you. That's all I gotta say about it. It's very scary, and nobody should be doing that, especially with drinking alcohol.
The only time she could have actually ingested the GHB was when she was at Jason's apartment. When asked, Jason admitted that he did have the drug there, but he diverted the accusation by claiming that he himself had almost died from overusing it, implying that it was being used recreationally by all parties. At the time, he was still in custody for the previously mentioned Billy Ray Cyrus
Facepalm in
incident,
real
and
life.
Unfortunately, the PIs didn't find enough evidence to convict him of anything. While Jason was still on trial, he continued to be as intentionally disruptive to the proceedings as he possibly could, as he believed that it would make his story all the more interesting if someone were to make a biopic of him. To put it generously, his trial was a chaotic circus. He fired his state-appointed lawyer and instead hired Mr. Heller, a big-shot defense lawyer, and he then rejected a very generous plea deal because, in his words, the king of all pimps shouldn't settle for a 5 to 10 year timeout in jail. In the opinion of the district attorney, Jason was just doing this to stay in the spotlight longer, and indeed, he did manage to secure the attention of a studio called Polsky Films that offered him a big deal, but nothing ever came of it. As time went on, despite how much he dragged his feet during court proceedings, the time came to actually finalize them, at which point he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. His 4 years on the inside were pretty uneventful, and the 4 years that came after his release in 2016 followed suit, with Jason mostly maintaining a low profile. However, it seems that all of his pretending to be insane from years prior was finally catching up to him, as he had become a lot stranger. For a time after his release, he took up sun gazing.
Here goes the weird shit. Yeah, I guess I'll stick around for the next 10 minutes or so just to show you guys like what happened after he got out of prison and stuff.
Which is literally staring at the sun for hours on end, supposedly to show everyone how the sun isn't actually harmful, although Jason himself eventually acknowledged that this wasn't super successful of an endeavor. During one of these sun-gazing sessions, he was approached by the crew of 1 Minute Talk Show, where, after promoting the benefits of staring at the sun,
and like everyone thinks that it makes you blind. It doesn't make you blind. It doesn't even hurt. Like I teach people how to do it in 5 minutes. Am I smiling?
he once again retold the story.
Okay, this is one thing I will kind of like, agree with him on, that sun gazing isn't as bad as people think it is, you know what I mean? Our ancestors have done that for fucking eons.
Of his involvement with the former New York governor's prostitution controversy, of course rewriting it to make it seem like he was much more involved than he actually was. The clips of Jason got a lot of views online, and while he read through the comments, he noticed a lot of people were calling him Based. Liking the word, he took up the name of Mr. Based due to how similar it sounded to Mr. Beast, and because there are a lot of YouTubers who make content out of interviewing random people on the street, Jason started popping up on a lot of different YouTube videos, sharing aspects of his life and his views on spirituality.
And after that, I had like 250 out-of-body experiences in 1 year in college, and I became
He's capping.
spiritual.
While most of the people who came up to him had fairly small audiences, all of them collectively helped to get his name out there and build up curiosity online for who Jason was. Meanwhile, he was also trying to set the world record for the most time spent staring at the sun. What an ambitious, entrepreneurial mindset to have. And in 2023, Jason was randomly approached by an IRL streamer called One Sonic, who did a short interview with him. And it's at this point that Jason noticed something new. Unlike in the 2000s, when he had to beg for the attention of TV producers and radio hosts, the people interviewing him now were kids with
This is what you would call a narcissist.
Smartphones and computers, broadcasting their content by themselves online. Suddenly, it came to him that instead of having to constantly put on an act so that other people came over and put cameras on him, he could just do it himself. All he had to do was learn how to. And after a few weeks of bothering One Sonic to essentially show him the ropes, the two reconnected and streamed together, although it didn't go so well.
Bro, you got the most fucking people watching you I've ever seen. You got the second most donations I ever got, and you're crying like a bitch that I'm hurting you. Turn this off. Turn this stream off. You're in my house. I don't want you filming. Turn this off. Right now. Turn it off. Turn it off right now. Off.
During these crash outs, Jason would occasionally stop to tell Sonic that he was just kidding, but eventually, this became a very uncomfortable.
Just kidding, just kidding, just kidding. I watched a video of him and Jack Doherty earlier, and he just kept saying, just kidding, just kidding. I don't really think he's ever kidding.
Circumstance for Sonic. Thus began Jason's career as an IRL streamer. For the first 3 months, he averaged 500 viewers, an amount which, while not high enough to make any super real money, was more than enough for him to get harassed out of any establishment he walked into. And just as he was about to give up, he heard that streamers on Kick could make up to $85 an hour if they got good viewership. And after around 1 month, he was banned, prompting him to switch over to YouTube, where he would end up staying for the foreseeable future, which eventually led him to a guy called Ed Basemaster, a YouTuber with over 2 million subscribers. As the two became friends, many networking doors suddenly swung open for Jason, none of which being nearly as fateful as when Ed called him one night and told him that none other than World of T-Shirts Joshua Block was making his way around town and was about to pass his building, suggesting that Jason should show up and meet him. Jason had officially heard the call, and their legendary first meeting would take place.
Hey, my name is Mr. Based. I'm the
I don't know about legendary, but here we go.
world's greatest streamer. Why is this group walking past me?
Let's go.
Who are you guys?
Scram, bitch.
Who are you guys?
Scram.
Who are you?
Scram, bitch.
Who are you?
I'll sue your ass. Scram.
No, who are you? Who are you? I just want to know who you guys are.
Although the meeting went pretty poorly, there was no denying the entertainment value. And when Michael Quinn, Josh's then manager, saw the interaction, he decided to play peacemaker in much the same way he previously had when he had manufactured the beef between Josh and Daniel Larson. The two of them would eventually become best buddies, but for now, he was still doing his own thing. And just a few days after meeting Josh, he met up with a new character called Carl, also known as Carl Doe or Carl 3. They went to a bar together, where they were promptly kicked out due to trolls calling the place up. When they went to a pizza place, the same thing happened, and so out of frustration, they eventually just went back to Jason's apartment, where Carl conducted a short interview. During the interview, Jason admits to personally meeting Jeffrey Epstein, implying that he had a weirdly high opinion of him, describing him as tall, handsome, and swaggy. Epstein apparently spent
This will tell you everything you need to know about Mr. Based.
$30,000 to $40,000 a night on girls from New York Confidential, during which he didn't even ask them for sex. All he wanted was for them to party and do blow with him.
I don't know anything about like people being recorded, like celebrities, this and that. The girls always told me everything. I never heard any big name. Maybe they told him here's extra money, don't tell Jason. Right. Who knows? Right.
Jeffrey was so popular with Jason's girls that they would fight for the appointments, as it allowed them to meet a bunch of powerful men. Despite the cordial relations Jason and Carl had at the start, things quickly turned sour. About a month after the first meeting, the two had a spat on stream, during which they argued over who was a bigger piece of shit. Jason argued Carl was a sociopath, while Carl called Jason a manipulator who...
I don't know if we're going to get to the part, but eventually I want you guys to, if you are interested in this stuff, you know, go watch the video from Turkey Tom. But eventually they say, or he says that the GHB came from him that killed that one chick. So the one that was hanging out with the Zoltan dude. So the reason why, like when he just said something that was like, like he said, oh, Epstein didn't tell me nothing. Maybe he gave him a little extra, the escorts a little extra money to not tell me nothing. I don't believe that, man, because this guy, he be capping like a motherfucker. He lies so much, man. He's such a narcissistic, sociopathic, motherfucking conniving ass. I don't even know how to explain it, bro. But if you guys watch the full video, you'll get it. I'm gonna go for like another 5 minutes or so, but
pretended to be a hippie. Jason insisted the only reason he was calling him was to wish Carl the best and ask him to never approach him again.
See you. I hope I never see you again.
Okay, but I didn't call you a narcissist. You just made that up.
You call me every word in the book.
I call you a sociopath. Slept with more guys, more girls than anyone. I slept with more girls, obviously, than anyone you've known in your whole life.
Despite supposedly not wanting to associate with Carl anymore, the two still talk to each other, albeit it's not very friendly. Around this time, Jason was streaming to his 3,500 followers, when a user called Starbucks Nazi sent a text-to-speech message containing the N-word with the hard R 40 times in a row, which led to a suspension. And after that, one Sonic came back into the picture. Following their introduction in 2023, the two alternated between being acquaintances and then being openly hostile toward each other. They started occasionally streaming together sometime in 2024, following Jason's glow up as a content creator, with Jason going as far as to buy Sonic a hat from Balenciaga. This was a bit tone deaf.
The most important thing is family. AAA shares the same family values. For over 100 years, AAA has been providing legendary service and has helped what it values.
Since it happened around the time Balenciaga had children posing in sexualized ways in their advertisements, so some people weren't too happy about them getting the hat. But regardless, all of that aside, the two were such good friends during this time they were even getting high together. One time, Jason gave Sonic an unspecified drug at his apartment, only to then kick him out and send him back home. It's a miracle the journey didn't end with someone discovering his body the next day in a ditch. And with that in mind, it really comes as no surprise that they had another falling out. At some point, the two of them had a fight after Jason called Sonic a retard in a joking manner. He took it pretty personally and stormed out of the apartment, grunting and huffing in a way pretty similar to that carrot-eating pufferfish. You know the one. Oh, he's so cute. Look at him. Jason then talks to him through the window to talk him down before handing him a beer.
No. Hold on.
You want a beer, Sonic?
Yeah, give me a motherfucking beer.
No, but you stream outside like your anger that you're not in here. We stream inside. People love this shit. It's content, all right? Tell me when you need another beer.
About a month later, all that bad blood culminated
Take that, motherfucker.
in a very weird interaction outside of Jason's apartment where, after a brief argument between Sonic and some girl, Jason comes out of the building to see what the ruckus is about. And it turns into a very awkward argument.
What the hell is going on out here? Who's making all this noise?
He's a real ass nigga from downtown Manhattan, so shut the fuck up!
I'm so tough compared to you. You cannot murder me. Stop talking shit. Stop talking shit to me. Okay? I want you to stop fucking talking shit. All right?
But the fight did not end there, as after Jason let Sonic go, Sonic went in for seconds.
Everything is from you!
What kind of kick was that, bro?
I just crossed the line.
Obviously, this incident severely damaged the relationship between the two, as they pretty much stopped streaming together for the next half a year, during which Jason was openly hostile towards Sonic, leading to this little gem.
We will go press Sonic without hurting Sonic or touching Sonic. I will track that bitch down, and using only my mouth, I will fuck Sonic.
But just as the drama boiled over, Jason got into another beef with a guy named Waxiest, who found out about the ongoing investigation into Julia Sumnick's death. The two had a big argument out on the street, as Waxiest expressed he was not comfortable with the idea of Jason hanging around women, given his history of allegations. Jason, meanwhile, accused him of slander and acted like he had no idea what he was talking about, before threatening to sue him.
Call me a murderer again.
I'm going
Call me a murderer again.
Break me then.
Call me a murderer
Break
again.
me then.
Call me a murderer
Break
again.
me then.
Come on, so I can
Do
sue
something.
you.
Do something, you twig.
The convo becomes completely unhinged from this point on, as Jason goes back and forth between threatening to beat Waxy.
Goes to bite his fucking nose. What the fuck is this guy on?
Up, and then inviting him to his apartment for a drink within a span of 3 seconds.
I love you, bro. You're a good guy.
Hey.
You're a good guy.
Alrighty.
Come back to my house. Let me make you a drink.
Undecided whether he wanted to get away from Waxiest or continue to badger him, Jason decides to sprint, but then turns around and starts throwing bananas at him. Literal bananas. He saw bananas on the street and he started throwing them. At some point, Jason gives up on the whole pacifist charade, and after Waxiest continues to ask probing questions, this happens.
What's going on, dude? Why you running? Oh, he snapped my phone. Good thing I got a phone case on. That's assault. That's fucking... I'll report you for that right there. That's on his stream.
I could tell him you're calling me a murderer.
Eventually, Jason just walks off and leaves the cameraman, the aforementioned Carl, to chat with Waxiest, which seemed to make the situation die down for the time being. After this incident, Jason got really angry with Carl and ended his friendship with him, supposedly because he was a dirty, super racist sociopath. His words, not mine. Later on in the same month, a guy named Ronald, who claimed to be Sonic's boyfriend, walked up to Jason's door and started knocking violently, demanding that he open it. While it's hard to make out a lot of this interaction, Jason came.
Alright, you guys, I've watched this video before. If you guys want to watch the rest of the video, let me show you how to do so. Alright, and then you can just like go back in the video, pause right here, and then find Turkey Tom, the $3.6 million drug dealer, pimp managing Joshua Block.
Came away from the situation.
And then I hope you guys have a great night. This is gonna be a regular thing for me, you know. I'm gonna try to do at least a video every week, whether it's a reaction video or a music video or, you know, both, however I'm feeling. And I hope everybody is just continues to strive to chase their dreams, not necessarily chase them, but attract them and manifest them and do everything that you know you're supposed to be doing on this planet. Love you guys.